Okay, we'll go ahead and get started since it's 6 o'clock. If you haven't already, please start the VApp defsec_Splunk/Sysmon. It should have been pushed to you if you have been attending. If not, go ahead and grab it from the DefSec catalog. Sign up for Mock 6. Nick posted the link in Slack. And don't forget to do attendance at the link at the bottom. So today, we're talking about Splunk and Sysmon. So what is Splunk? It's an enterprise-grade SIM, which is a security information and event management tool. You can collect logs from multiple sources, and it allows you to search them all in one interface. You can correlate data, find attacks, and it's not just for Windows. You can forward Linux logs or any of your network appliances. They can all go to it. Sysmon is a Windows, this is definition straight from their website, but it installs on top of the Windows event log and viewer to provide detailed information about process creations, network connections, and changes to files. It's part of the Sys internal suite, so it is free. There's the download link. And how do they work together? So we're going to forward the logs that Windows and Sysmon generate to Splunk, and then we'll analyze them in there. So for our lab, please log into your box, rename the Windows box to your name, and then restart it. We're all going to be forwarding the same Splunk instance, so we can't all have the same host name. So typical DSU password 1 bang.
We'll see how long it takes to restart a bunch of VMs.
So while these are coming back online, the lab we're doing tonight was actually an inject we had at National CCDC last year. You can kind of see it broke down here. I copied and pasted it. But the step 1, download and install the Splunk forwarder. So here you have to create an account for Splunk and then download it. They gave us some basic documentation here. They also said download Sysmon and then install the Swift on Security Sysmon config, which is what we'll be doing as well. All of this is downloaded already on your VApp. And then from there, forward these logs. Here's where you do it. Here's how you do it. So what we are doing has appeared in the real competition before.
So as you're getting logged back in, just kind of briefly a little bit more on Sysmon and how that works. So if I just search here for Swift on Security Sysmon, Sysmon requires a configuration file to actually tell the tool what it is you want to gather information on. So Sysmon, actually if I just go search Sysmon, we'll get a little bit deeper. On Windows systems, by default, there's some logging that happens on the systems, and most of it's just recorded in the security event log. Some useful things that are recorded in the event log as far as learning what exactly is going on your system, which may be useful in these types of competitions, are just 4688 process creation events. So when some process is created, there's a new service was installed. Those could be useful to track if red team's doing something malicious. It's okay. Sysmon is a lot better than okay. You can get a lot more information from Sysmon on some of these types of events. So Sysmon, this is the Microsoft page for Sysmon. You can see all these different kind of event IDs. So event ID 1 here is process creation, for example. That one's really useful. I find network connection to be super useful as well. So this means Sysmon can log every single time your computer or any process on your computer makes a network connection out to somewhere else, or somewhere else, red team, scoring engine, or whoever, makes a connection into your computer. or any service on your computer, any process on your computer. Sysmon can log all of that. There's a lot of other events and things that they're adding into Sysmon, even as we go along, file creation events. This can log pretty much everything that's going on your system, and that can be super useful. So again, to actually make Sysmon work, you're going to need to install a configuration file, and Nick will show you how to do that. One of the configuration examples that you can use, and a lot of people in the industry do use, if you just search for, again, Swift on Security Sysmon, you'll get to this GitHub page with this fairly large configuration file. There's a bit of stuff here as I'm still scrolling and still not at the bottom. But if you look deeper into it, it has a lot of kind of conditions as to if we want to create an event, if we want to collect an event about something that's happening. So this is event ID 1, for example. So everything in here, this is process creation. By default, Sysmon, and with this configuration here, will include and create an event for every new process creation except anything that's listed here. So some of these are very common. You're going to see DLL host all the time. SMSS, you're going to see that absolutely all the time. There's some common things in here that are legit, are normal, that are included in this config, so we don't include those events, just to kind of weed out some of the noise. That's a large part of what the Swift on Security config is doing. A lot of service hosts, you may know service host.exe can be used maliciously, or things that look like service host.exe can be used maliciously. We know if service host was created with this very specific command line, that is a normal thing for Windows, and I frankly don't care to see it. So that's what this config is doing. It's not going to show you any of that. It goes through, again, more than just images or network connections are here. Network connections is a little bit different. Sometimes when I'm playing around with Sysmon, I'll make this a little bit more broad. So with the network connections are very, very, very noisy on systems. If you include absolutely every single network connection, you will see everything that's happening on your system, and maybe that's something you want. This config will only pull network connections from certain events. So you'll see here it says onmatch include. We're only going to see a network connection if it comes from cmd.exe, for example. If cmd.exe, PowerShell.exe is making network connections in CCDC, that could be not a good thing, and you may want to investigate that. That's what this would help you do. You could delete all of this and change this to an exclude, and then it would collect absolutely every single network event, even all of the normal web browsing traffic. That could be useful in some cases, just something to be aware of. That's kind of the Sysmon config there. I'll let you go back.
So everyone get logged back in to there. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and open command prompt as an admin. And then cd to users, or C users, DSU desktop tools. So within this folder on the desktop, we have 64-bit, 32-bit, Splunk forwarders, the Swift on Security Sysmon config, and then the actual Sysmon application. Did everyone get there so I can zoom out? Cool. So on the Swift on Security GitHub page, he provides instructions on how to install it with his config file. All it is running Sysmon, except the EULA-I for install, and then you give it the config. So here we'll go Sysmon. Oh wait, Sysmon's a directory, so we'll have Sysmon, sysmon.exe, except EULA-I, and then Swift on Security, which is also a directory.
Might be easier just to move those in the same directory. But that, yeah, you got that.
Tab completes a friend. Very good friend. And then go ahead and run that once you get it typed out. So then you'll see the basic info about sysinternals, saying how to install it, how to uninstall it, what it does. Did you not get that?
That means you did something wrong.
Oh. ACCC. There we go.
Yep, that's better.
So here's what you should see. Sysmon installed. It's also installed and it's starting up and running. So now that we have installed Sysmon, we are going to have to install the Splunk forwarder. So also, if you go back to the desktop and tools, the 64-bit one should work just fine. I put 32 just to be safe. Check the box to agree. Next. Here, you just have to create a base admin account. Admin, password 1bang. The deployment server, we don't have one, so you can go ahead and click next over that one.
We do, but it's fine.
The receiving indexer, well, do you want to explain the deployment server?
Sure. So what the deployment server is, and we actually do kind of have one set up to an extent here. With our Splunk server, we have one Splunk server set up on vCloud Internet, so everyone's going to be forwarding all of your logs to that one central server. In a real-world environment, distributed environment, that's how that would be. You'd have one big Splunk server and all of the clients in your environment or your enterprise forwarding to that. Now, managing all of those endpoints, all those forwarders, if you have to go around to each computer manually, that's a pain. No one likes to do that. This deployment server idea will tell this Splunk forwarder to check into your Splunk server, the deployment server component of that Splunk server. And on the server, you can configure the applications, which then will be sent down to the Splunk forwarder. And in those applications, that's where you'll define what logs you want the forwarder to pick up, where you want the forwarder to send those logs to, and any other configuration for the forwarder. It can all happen through that deployment server. So setting it up right now to point to that deployment server is useful in configuring all of those endpoints later on down the road. But not something you'll really probably need for a CCDC type environment, unless if you are running a central Splunk server and you have a number of forwarders in your environment, then it would be something you'd want to do. Don't know that I pushed the port through anyway, so yeah, it probably won't work.
At Nationals, when we did this on all the Windows systems, I just went around and installed it and did the receiving indexer because there was only 5-ish Windows systems, so it wasn't the end of the world. The IP address of our receiving indexer is here on the right, 172.17.50.179, and we are using the default port of 9997. And then click next and install again. And then we can go ahead and click finish. So now Splunk is installed, but
Forwarder.
we need to, or the forwarder is installed, but we need to tell it what to send. Right now it's not going to send anything. So to do that, we're going to go to the Splunk home folder, which is going to be in programs, and then Splunk, Etsy, system, local, and inputs.conf. And there's Sublime on here for a little bit nicer experience than just regular Notepad. So by default, it's just going to have your host name. So that's going to tell Splunk where the message came from, where the log came from. So all we're going to do is append actually, this won't save because we're not running it as admin.
Yeah, there's ways around that. It's fine.
So go ahead and start Sublime as admin. Oh, you can't drag and drop. You can't drag and drop.
Oh, yeah.
Windows and their permissions.
Security.
Okay. Now we can add to it because we can save. So all this is saying is this is going to be a note saying we're doing Windows specific ones. And then here we're going to define that we want the Windows event log applications. So the application event log that's there by default, disable to 0, which is false. The same for security and system. And then this last one's going to be the Sysmon logs that we want to forward as well.
That render XML equals true line will become very important. It just kind of tells the forwarder how to send and how to configure, or how to format, I guess, these logs as it sends it over to the Splunk server. That way the Splunk server has an easier time indexing those logs and actually pulling out the fields that we need to be able to search them easily.
Yep. Yes.
Zoom way in.
Did everyone get that? We're still typing. go with good. And then just go ahead and make sure you save it. So after that, we need to restart the forwarder. So if you open up services, and scroll down to Splunk forwarder service, just go ahead and click restart. So now all our logs should be forwarding to Splunk. So if you go ahead and open your favorite web browser.
Before we get too terribly far, I want to pivot a little bit. Just so everyone is aware, so Windows Event Log, Event Viewer is how you can view the Windows Event Log. So if you want to kind of follow along and look at what's going on in your system, that's cool. Just open up Event Viewer. So Nick helped you configure the Splunk forwarder to send over a couple different logs. So application, security, and system, I believe you sent all three of those, right? Mm-hmm. So all three of those logs, those are default logs on Windows systems. All of that is now going to be sent over to our Splunk server, which may give it a bit of information. So system log, we can talk about or have like a whole nother night about these logs and some of the logging that this stuff can be useful for. Logon events, for example, are in there. Under applications and services logs, Microsoft, Windows, and then it gets really big, and eventually you can scroll and find Sysmon in here somewhere. Scroll a little more, not that much. I thought maybe my Sysmon's not even installed. Demo fail. I did jack with my config and it broke it, so I might need to Control Z a bit. But anyway, that is where the Sysmon logs should be. Can you try and pull up yours? Just your log location. If you do install Sysmon in the competition, any of these competitions, it still can be used even without Splunk. You still can look at the logs that Sysmon creates, that Sysmon generates, even without Splunk. It should be under here, Windows, right? Yeah. But when you configured, you did Microsoft-Windows -Sysmon/operational. That's this path. That's where that comes from. It's not just something that's completely made up. Is anyone following along in this point, do you see Sysmon under here? Good, okay. It's just me that screwed up then.
Mine's expanding.
Yep, it takes its sweet time. I'll switch back. So go ahead and if you do get in there, take a look and kind of just see what those logs look like. You can filter with the Windows Event Viewer by specific event IDs. So if you want to filter to event ID 1, for example, and just look at all the process creation events, you can do that right here. If you have Splunk, or if you have some sort of SIM or log aggregation utility, Splunk or Elastic, whatever it may be, that's going to be a nicer way of viewing logs in general than the Windows Event Viewer. Windows Event Viewer kind of sucks for that, especially searching through lots and lots of events, but Nick does have his up here, so you can see there's a lot of event ID 1, so a lot of process create events. If you just kind of click on one, then at the bottom you'll be able to see kind of what's going on. It's, again, the display here is not super, so like drag that up and just make that bigger. Yeah, so in there, this specific one is a process creation event for, you'll see Splunk Universal Forwarder bin splunk-PowerShell.exe. In this environment, configuring Sysmon with a Splunk forwarder, Sysmon will log the Splunk forwarder a lot. Ton of events will show up there. So that's kind of where you can see those logs even before you have Splunk set up. They'll be in the Windows Event Viewer that way.
But if you are using Splunk, then you could go back to the same configuration file from Swift on Security and exclude this file path. So then you won't see that in Sysmon anymore. So if you open up your favorite browser, there's Chrome Firefox installed, and go to 172.17.50.179 HTTPS. I think. No.
Nope.
Oh, just HTTP.
Yep, just regular. We don't need security here. It's fine.
You'll get to our Splunk dashboard. DSU and password 1 bang will let you in. So over here, you're going to see within Splunk, you can add on multiple apps. So all those will come up here. We're just using the search and reporting right now. And right now we can see that 23,000 events have been indexed since we installed this because it was clean before tonight started. At first you don't see anything. If you just type a star and click enter, you will start to see all of your events. This is going to be your raw logs that are semi-parsed depending. Over here they'll start pulling out some of your fields. So for example, we can see that there are 9 hosts. So there are 9 people following along. And those are
some interesting ones in there. I am not your mother, sorry.
So by this, then you can zoom into just, let's say you just want to look at only Kyle's machine. You can click his, and it's gonna add host equals Kara Corman to the top, and then you will just see his logs. No. Also, you can see under source, these are our 4 logs that we sent with the Splunk forwarder. So application, security, system, and then the Sysmon ones. You could drill down to just looking at Sysmon ones as well. You can type all of this in the top bar, or you can just keep clicking, and every time you click, it'll add it to your filter. I think this is about as far as we had planned. So now it's going to be
Going at time. So yeah, I think now we're going to probably look through some of the logs. I don't think it's parsing everything I want it to. I also don't know my password.
Okay, I'll get out just that. So from there, we might just be able to type in that user.
That can help, yes. It might be net.exe.
Yep, so here you can see his log. So instead of just having to know the syntax of Splunk, you can just type your fields and keywords and it might show up. But here we can see he ran command line as administrator, C Windows System 32, net user, add haha xd with password of password 1 bang.
All of that is information that Sysmon captured. Windows by default cannot capture, or does not rather capture full command line. That is, I believe, exactly what you're looking at. It's like the command line argument to net.exe, I presume. Yep, command line. Yes, because when you pipe, you're actually creating multiple processes. So there will be a separate event ID 1, or on the Windows side in Windows logs 4688, separate log for each of those processes that you create in that entire pipeline. It's may make it more difficult to track some of those things down, but as you see all those processes created at the exact same time on the exact same machine, that could be interesting and maybe something to correlate all of that together. Wait, could I just do it this way?
is very touchy, because it's through the iLab. But as you see this, if you wanted to pick out a specific field in here, you can also highlight it, select it, and add to search, exclude from search, or just create a whole new one.
Okay, so I added that add-on. I don't know if that's going to change if anything's parsing or not.
So for example, I bet we could exclude
Yes, it all works now.
that. Exclude from search. So we don't want it to show up in any of our fields, this Splunk forwarder running. So all I have to do is add that too.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still getting it in the Splunk. So if you want to look back into it, you could. But here in your dashboard, you're not seeing it.
Yep. All right, so kind of going through everything you're seeing in Splunk here, this, of course, is the search field. That's where you can supply that entire search. The language is called SPL, or Splunk Processing Language. There's all sorts of tutorials and documents out there on how to build that. There's lots of tools that you can use to crunch the data and work with it as much as you can up there. Again, kind of working with it as easily as you can. I just threw in an application, so by default, Splunk didn't really know how to parse this Sysmon information. Just now that I got that in, if you just click on this arrow next to any of these events, this large chunk of stuff, that's the XML, raw XML data that Splunk forwarder is sending over to the Splunk server itself. And that's everything in that Windows event log. So Splunk should be pretty good with this app about parsing all of this and actually pulling everything out. So that means everything is pulled into its separate field where you can actually then run queries against that. Command line and even some of this parent information will be extremely useful. Over on the left-hand side, some of the other fields, he talked about host. Host is just going to be the host name of the computer. Source and source type. Source is where it's coming from. Source type is going to be very similar. So I could search for just the Sysmon logs on absolutely everyone's machine by clicking on that there. I think I actually might do that. And so another way of finding probably Kyle's thing here. Actually, if I look at, so I'm looking along the left-hand side here for some of the interesting fields, the things that I will see in here. So event ID, we'll see all of those different event IDs that Sysmon is generating. Event ID 1 is the most frequent because there's a lot of process creation events going on in these systems, even though you're not doing a whole lot on them. We're not collecting a ton of network traffic. There is some, and I'm going to click on that because that might be interesting. So I clicked on that. Now you'll see my search changed. So it has event ID equals 3 very specifically in there because I'm only looking for that network traffic. We can then look at source and destination IPs. I'm a little bit more interested in looking at the processes that are actually making connections. That's something that Sysmon can do that pretty much nothing else can, not even anything built into Windows by default. Create a connection between a process on your system and a network connection, putting those two things together so we can see who is actually talking to where. I'm going to look for process. ID is not super useful. Process might be. Yeah, so process. MSI exec is talking to stuff. I can see that here, so if I just kind of throw that in, or that field, everything that I'm seeing now is just MSI exec making calls to somewhere and from somewhere. So destination IPs, I can see over on the left-hand side here, whatever that IP is, MSI exec on some machines, I'll figure out which machines in a moment, is making network connections to that. And I bet Kyle's looking up what that IP is for me right now, so I don't have to. But really, all of these are public IPs. Who owns the server, do you know, or that IP?
Organization Fastly, ISP.
Sure. I got no idea. But because we limited with that Sysmon config, the Swift on security Sysmon config, most of our network connections, we're not going to see a whole lot in here. If we go in and kind of mess with that config file and say, give me all of the network connections, every time you visit a website, we will see chrome.exe connected to wherever Chrome connected to. I wanted to do that with mine. I borked my Sysmon config. Does anyone want to see that happen or do that? Kind of mess with your config and open it up a little more? Or should we play around and Splunk a little more? Feedback is helpful here. What? Okay. I'll look at a little bit more of event or processes that are actually running on these machines. One of the kind of, I guess I don't even know what they call them anymore. It's been too long since I've been in Splunk. But one of the processors, I guess I'll call it, that we can throw in here, if we use a pipe command, we'll take everything that the search previously had generated for us. So here it's going to give me all Sysmon events that are process creation events. I'm going to take all of those process creation events and I'm going to throw them into a stats command. Stats count by process. Is it just process? I think just process. And what my goal is here is to see how many times each process is being executed across all of our systems. And I can actually pipe this to a sort count to sort this by count. And actually, I'm going to do negative count. So that will invert the count and give me the most frequent first. So I can see here that, I know it's hard to see, but on the left-hand side there, cmd.exe is being executed 523 times across all of our systems. I'm actually kind of surprised at that. I don't know why cmd.exe is being run that much. Is someone doing something funky, Kyle, maybe? Like, CMD is just happening a lot. So I'm interested in that. So I might throw on cmd.exe. I can say just view events here. That, again, we'll just throw it up into this search up here. I can see then, even if I just look on the left-hand side here, host, Are You My Mother? It's happening on that system quite a bit more than anyone else's. It's happening on a lot of other systems, though, so maybe I'm going to dig into just that system a little bit more. I'm going to stay out of just that system for now. cmd.exe is running. Is that malicious? Not necessarily. Could it be malicious? Definitely, possibly. So digging a little bit deeper than just to say cmd.exe is running is necessary to actually figure out what's going on, and that is where the command line can really, really help. So there's 30 different command lines here, so I could click on that to view the top ones. I'm going to do a stats count again, so stats count by command line, and then I'll sort by count, actually negative count, just to kind of pull all of this together so I can see what's going on all of these. So a lot of these have to do with Splunk Universal Forwarder. Again, I probably don't care about that. So I'm going to say, throw up in here, not, do I have to have an and? I don't think I have to have an and. Not, I'll say Splunk Universal Forwarder. So I'm putting asterisks or stars at either side of it. That is a wild card. At this point, by me doing this, if someone is doing something malicious on my system in a command prompt and they put Splunk Universal Forwarder, whatever else they want that's malicious in there, I will no longer see it because I've just excluded it. So that's kind of a danger of excluding things. I don't think we're going to have any issues with excluding the bad things tonight. I think I found a bad thing here, though, just by excluding that and looking at the command lines that cmd.exe is running, right? So I see someone has a bad.bat inside of Sysmon. I'm glad people are doing these things, so I have content to demo. It's great. But I could click on that, filter that to view the events, and take a look at what the host is. I have a host, that there's a bad.bat running on that system. At that point, I know where bad.bat is, right? Because I can click down on this again. Scrolling sucks, but that's fine. So here's the full command line again: C users, DSU, desktop tools, Sysmon, bad.bat. I'd want to go to that computer, actually log into that computer and open up that bad.bat or inspect it, figure out what's going on, figure out how it got there. So maybe start looking for network connections or see if this cmd.exe that bad.bat is creating network connections. That would be interesting to look at, and probably kick out red team, because presumably this is red team. In this case, it's probably just Nick playing around on his own system. But hey, I found bad.bat, right? So kind of looking in those event logs there. Questions over this so far? Do you have anything?
I was just gonna say, just as like Cody made tables of stats and stuff.
Yes.
One of the injects from last year,
Yep.
on day 2 was this on the right. Yesterday started forwarding Windows logs to your Splunk. Using that forwarded data, I'd like to see a report that's valid versus failed logon attempts on all Windows systems. So within Splunk, you can take your query, put it into a report, and then generate it, and then you get all the graphs that you could ever want for an inject. So they look professional, and then they're also pretty simple. It's the same as what you're seeing in the query. Also, if you have a ton of time, you can create dashboards in Splunk, which are the same as the query. So they refresh every, 15 seconds you want. And then you can have that pulled up on a monitor, and if an event that contains the word bad.bat comes up, it'll flag it, and it can change the color. So then you could see at a glance that, oh, you should go investigate that. That might be more real world type stuff, but I mean, good to know that you can do that.
There we go. Do you want to show how to do visualizations, if you remember?
Sure. How did you do the process ID one?
So
Oh.
event ID, is that what we're looking for? Oh, okay.
Is it like event ID?
Yep,
Yeah.
event ID. So it does get pretty picky on the case, even the case on some of these searches here. Definitely the field, have to get the field name right. And if you don't know it, find it on the left-hand side under interesting fields, just click on it, it'll show up pretty easily. But anytime you get any sort of statistical information, so stats count, again, is gonna be a very, very common one to generate statistics and counts of whatever. There's a lot of other things you can use to generate statistical information though, but when you have that, you can put it in charts, put it in tables, there's all sorts of different visualizations. This one looks fun. More than just count.
I don't know if visualization mode's gonna work. Oh, there it kind of goes. So if you just go to the dashboards tab or reports, they both kind of work the same. Create new dashboard, watch CMD. Add a panel. Let's say we want, I don't know, This one will probably just do a stats table. Here's gonna be your search string, so you just take exactly what you had in your search query, put it in there, and then add to your dashboard. So here, I didn't do the best job of creating this one. But you can see that you have your table of all your commands. So if you want to go back and edit it, you just click the magnifying glass. So we only want to select CMD line. Nope, let's select. You know it off the top of your head for select. Just wanting to get one field.
I've done table before, but there's probably better ways. But you'd want more than just one field though, right? Because you still need to preserve the counts.
There we go. So now we just have the two. We can see the sublimes doing a lot.
Huh.
Count's not actually working, but
That's okay.
you get the idea. So these would be your dashboards that you can set to update every once in a while. You can do a pie chart. So when you see a new color, that would be a new command that's ran. Reports work the same way. Take same query, put in a report, choose your charts that you want, and save those as a PDF, turn into the competition.
Another command that can be useful for generating some of these things and just looking at the most frequent of whatever, when you're clicking on some of these fields on the left-hand side, it by default shows you the top 10 values. You can do that through the search query here as well. So if I look at all of the Sysmon information, actually let's do event ID equals 3, and then do top process. I believe this should, no, of course, doesn't work. Event ID 3 first. If you do event ID properly, it works better. Wow, scrolling sucks. Or event code, is that what it is? Yes, event code. Again, field names are important. So this just shows me in kind of more statistical view as well, the top 10 by default, and you can change the number of processes that you'll actually get here, but the top 10 processes that appear in Splunk that match all of this here, right? So my Sysmon event ID 3 or any network connections. Because I have these counts and I have these percents, automatically gives me that information. If you just click on the visualization tab, it will give you a chart, which can be useful. You can change that chart since I have percentages. It gives you recommended ones over to a pie chart, and you can see what's running or what's making network connections the most often. From here, you could go and add this to a dashboard, but this is kind of a quick, easy way to get a chart, just if you're looking at statistical information from the most frequent something. I believe bottom would do the same thing as to least frequent. Charts and things on bottom commands might not be as useful because you're probably going to have a lot of very infrequent things. So you'll notice in this one, right now there's a lot of Chrome going on, Chrome.exe. This is all from my system. I did go in and fix my Sysmon config. So just opening up that config here, there used to be an entire network connect include portion, so it only included a number of things. I completely deleted that, and now I just have this onmatch exclude. So if I put Spotify in here, if I have OneDrive on here, it's not going to show me any network connections from those, but Sysmon will now create logs for every single other network connection that's going on my system. So if you wanted to change yours to this, you can do that. You're going to log absolutely everything. It might be very, very noisy because now I am getting all of my Chrome everything. So if I start looking at that, I can then look at where Chrome is going, which may be useful in some cases. So destination IPs, hosts, there's where I'm going, and I didn't even go very far. I've got DSU, Google, YouTube, and Twitter, and I've got all that crap showing up. So that's why it's not enabled by default. It can get extremely noisy. If you have a system where you know Chrome should not be running, Edge should not be running, there are no users that are browsing the internet, enable it. Enable absolutely every network connection, because you shouldn't have any network connections other than maybe your one process that is your SSH server in that scenario, possibly, right? It just kind of depends on the system and the environment that you're in. I never even went to LinkedIn, but apparently I went to LinkedIn. Like, there's just a lot of stuff in there. Got anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on any of this stuff? Because we're pretty much out of content at that point then. So Sysmon can be super useful at gathering more information about what's going on in your system. If you're bored or you get to a point where you've got all the basic stuff done and locked down on your systems, throw Sysmon on there. I know, Kyle, I think you did that at Cyberforce, and you found Red Team getting into your system just by looking at Sysmon logs through the event viewer, right?
Yeah, I pretty much only had Sysmon, Task Manager open, and the security tab of event viewer. So I had two event viewers, Task Manager, and that's all I used in there.
There you go. Yep, look at login events in the security log. You can just turn to Google, say, hey, what's the login event in Windows logs, and it'll give you the event ID, so you can look specifically at that. I want to say it's 4624, but I could be wrong. I'm wrong. It's not that. But we'll try it anyway. Hey, it might be. Yep, an account was successfully logged on, so every single logon event. And there's a lot more in here. There's a lot of stuff going on Windows systems. It might be why some of you don't like Windows so much, but Windows is great anyway. So all of these dollar accounts, these are computer accounts that are logging onto their system. System is creating logon events, I guess, but there's a bunch of events, right? So all this in Splunk is really easy to look through. It's a much, much better interface to kind of look through everything and see all of this field that's going on in the system. If you don't have that though, use Event Viewer. Install it anyway, install Sysmon. It will help you run down Red Team's activity. I believe in the next competition, they'll be taking away points for Red Team activity, right? And you will have an opportunity to report Red Team activity and gain some of those points back. This can help with that. If you can track them and see what they're doing, then you can accurately report on what it is they're doing. It's really hard to gain points that way because it's really hard to track Red Team without some tools like this and taking the time to actually look at it, but these are necessary to be able to do that.
If you are super interested in Splunk 2, they do have a community edition. So on their website, Splunk free. You only get 500 megabytes of maximum daily indexing, but if you're only one person, probably not generating a ton of traffic. So it won't have all the features that the enterprise level will have, but it'll let you play with the queries and dashboards more if you're interested.
Right now, today, we've used 39 megabytes of the 500 that we have. So essentially nothing.
And there's 9 of us sending a whole lot of traffic to it.
Yep. Well, if there's no more questions, that's all we got. Thanks for coming, and make sure you do sign up for the mock competition this weekend if you're interested. We'll see you there.
Not gonna break it.
What?
Not gonna break it.
I don't care. You're gonna kill it.